I call this meeting of the Davenport Community School District Board of Directors to order. Director Dickman, would you please read our... Before you read the priorities, I wanted to apologize to all of you out there. Several members of the board were out supporting Dr. Tate out front, and so we were a little bit late. Sorry about that. Director Dickman, would you please read our board priorities?
I would be happy to. The Davenport School Board establishes the following priorities to ensure the academic success of all students. Provide leadership and direction to improve overall learning environment in our classrooms, schools, and district, including the health, safety, security, and happiness of students and staff. Direct and support actions, programs, and activities which reduce the impacts of poverty on our students, their families, and our community.
Thank you. Director Hayes, would you please read our mission and vision statements?
Yes, mission statement. Enhance each student's abilities by providing a quality education enriched by our diverse community. Vision statement. Education that challenges conventional thinking, prepares all students to compete in a global society, and inspires our students, parents, staff, and community to answer the question, what if?
Okay, thank you. Next up is recognition of student participation. And Julie, are you going to be saying anything? Okay, all right, huh? Okay, before they come up here, I just wanted to say a few words about our community. We have a great community, we have a great school district, and this issue has galvanized a lot of people to become involved and become supportive of Dr. Tate and some of the things that he stands for. And this has been an amazing overall situation, I have to say. And I think that that it isn't only Dr. Tate, it isn't the board, it is our community members, and it is some of our students that did some really amazing things in coming up with some of these t-shirts and going to the legislative forums. There were a lot of pieces that were involved in this. But I have to say, from my perspective, I think that without the community participation, and especially without the student participation, I don't think we'd be where we are. And I think my personal position is I think we're in a really, really good spot. We'll see how things go over the next 3 weeks or so, but we do want to recognize some of these students and some of the great things they've done. So, were you going to show your video, or? Why don't one of you come up and tell us a little bit about the video before it gets going?
Hi, I'm Mickey Sloat. I kind of helped pioneer this video, I suppose, and it's a lot of the words that we've been trying to say to representatives and legislators and people that really need to listen. So that's kind of why we made this video, is to share it on the internet and make something that could be passed around and get the word out easily. And we filmed it ourselves and we put it together, so I hope you enjoy it.
If I'm the future, why are you so scared to invest in my education? Why is someone else's education more important than mine?
Are we really worthless? Why are we still voting over party lines rather than personal preference?
Why are you ignoring us?
talk to your representatives.
Sign the petition.
Spread the word. I will fight. I will fight.
I will fight. I will fight. I will fight for my education.
Will you?
There is one other thing we put together I'm sorry. There's one other thing that we put together, some pictures of our journey along the way. So just real quick, PowerPoint. Go for it. There's no sound. I'm not that talented. I want to stop this right here. You gotta look at this little girl right here. Her sign says, "Good schools plus bacon equals Iowa support funding." It was the cutest thing. She's this big, no bigger than a minute. It was hilarious.
So, before I say anything more, I'd like to allow the board and Dr. Tate to make any remarks. Although before that, I'd like, Julie, if you wouldn't mind coming up, bringing all of those students up, and I'd like you or them to give us their names as well. Come on, you guys. Let's get up here.
Just into the microphone?
Yes, you need to speak in the microphone so we can record it in the minutes.
Anthony DeSalvo from Davenport North.
I'm Cade Beasley from Davenport North.
Mickey Sloat from Davenport Central.
Josie Tipsword from Davenport North.
Trevon Knox, Davenport North.
Hunter Bell, Davenport North.
Deja Dominic, Davenport North.
Julie DeSalvo, Davenport North. Mom.
Okay, thank you very much. And let me just open it up now to the board. If you'd like to make any comments, it's just a recognition of
I'd like to thank each of you for your hard work. It's just astonishing to see young people that are so supportive for the cause. Thank you.
Anybody else? Director DeFau.
And I'd like to go a bit further than Director Johansson did earlier and to state that I am 100% confident that we would not be where we're at today and poised to hopefully make some significant changes if it were not for you and your efforts, because we have tried to raise this issue many, many years in Des Moines and have not been effective. And it wasn't until your involvement and your willingness to stand up that we finally got some leverage, and a lot of credit to our parents who are supporting your efforts as well. You know, couldn't be prouder of all of you and what you're doing, and you know, you're living education through your actions, and it's just terrific.
Anybody else? Director Dickman.
I want to say my most sincere thank you to all of you. And I really think that this is the start of something, that you have gotten the ball rolling, and that it's just going to get bigger and bigger. And you've shown, you know, what we all hope democracy to be, that someone's speaking out for what's right and what's just, and really pushing for it, that they can get it done. And we might not get everything that we need this year, but we're going to keep going with it, and we're going to keep going forward. And I'm just so excited.
Director Crumwoody.
Yeah, I just, most of it's been said, but thank you for all of your hard work and efforts and the time that you've put into this. And not only you, but also the parents and other community members who have gotten on board. You know, school board members, we go to Des Moines often, talk to legislators often, but who are they listening to? They're listening to you folks. They're listening to the students, to parents, and other folks in the community. So I'm going to ask parents and other community members, go ahead, do what these kids are doing, and we will make a difference.
Anybody else? Director Snyder.
The thing that's most impressive about this is your actions are so selfless. I mean, they benefit all 16,000 kids that are in this district, and hopefully for years to come. And to say that we're proud of you, I think, is a huge understatement. We are incredibly proud of you guys, and this is what it's all about. And Anthony, you look pretty comfortable in that big leather chair.
Director Kluhl.
Well, we have miles to go before we sleep, and we're not at the top of the mountain yet. But there's no reason why we can't celebrate these small victories, and what you folks have done has been a minor miracle, because as Director Johansson, I think, said before, we've been trying for years. Director DeFau said we've been trying for years to make this happen. And it took a certain mix of things in that operation to make it happen. One of the big things was Dr. Tate's statement about his willingness to be a civil disobedient person to make this happen, because it's that important. But it's you students wearing this genius statement of worth less, because if you stop and think about it in terms of how that works, the first thing you do is you look at worth less, you see worthless. And you say, well, no, it can't be worthless, worth less. And then you say, no, they're worth more. So it causes you to become engaged in the statement. So whoever came up with that, excellent work. You know, we did go to Des Moines last Wednesday, and we talked to legislators, and one of the things that came up quite often was your representation of this district there at the Capitol building. And almost without exception, there was an appreciation for what Iowa students are doing and what you did as an example in the state of Iowa. It made us quite proud, bursted our buttons, but I'm glad to mention that to you as well, that's what we heard. And interestingly, one legislator made the statement that he said, you know, you folks come up here in your suits, and that's one thing, but those students were worth 3 of every one of you. Each one of you was. Very powerful image. Thank you very much for what you've done.
Dr. Tate, you have any words?
I do. Certainly what you are doing is humbling to me. It was several weeks ago that a couple of the board members were sitting with me and we were trying to figure what can be done. And the president sort of threw out a challenge. He didn't know where it was going. He said, we just have to go off the reservation. We just need to do something that's so different and road to get their attention. So actually, I was sitting home on a Sunday before the fateful Monday when I made my presentation, and I thought about the shirts that I'd seen on Saturday. And you see that and your commitment, and it's hard not to say, I'll do whatever it takes. So thank you.
Any other comments? You know, gosh, we could talk all night about you guys, seriously. And I noticed we have our director from the AEA is standing in the back of the room, and he's going to give a little presentation on leadership later on. And I think about leadership a lot, and I think of what you all did, and it makes me think about leadership. I think about your parents, and they deserve a lot of credit as well for all of the work raising you from a little baby and everything, but you getting up here to where you're making these big bold moves. And I think it was Director Kluhl that said you look good in the leather chair, but I think any of you would. I really do. And Julie, you have been magnificent. Julie has done so much work. Just so that everybody knows, she has organized a separate letter writing campaign. She has done a lot of these things, if not all of them, with the students, taking them all the way to Des Moines. I forget the other parent. It was Josie or Jody. I forget. Josie?
Jody.
Jody. And what's her last name? Tipsword. Jody Tipsword. Helped take a bunch of students up there to Des Moines as well. So it's just so many fantastic things going on here. We just wanted to really recognize you, appreciate you, we really do, and I think I'll leave it at that. Oh, Director Kluhl.
I just want technical questions. Mickey, music for that, the video, was that just canned or did somebody, pardon?
Public domain.
Public domain, okay. It was very appropriate. Yeah.
Did any of you students want to say anything before we get going with our regular meeting?
I know Mickey and I had some things we'd like to say.
Go ahead.
Well, first off, I'd like to start it by saying thank you guys for doing what you're doing. Thank you, especially Dr. Tate. Your courageous decision. I mean, I know all of us students, we fully support you, and I know that you fully support us as well, so I'd like to thank you for that.
Along the way, we've met presidential candidates, countless representatives and legislators, and most importantly, we got the word out about our group. At the Capitol, we held a rally in Des Moines, and we were featured in the Washington Post and on the radio, and these rallies are really starting to make a difference.
But we shouldn't think that we've won the battle yet. Like we said earlier, this is a small victory so far. There's still a long way to go. We still need to keep talking to our legislators. We need more of a voice. Everybody's voice matters, and we just need to keep talking to people, keep spreading the word, keep this momentum going so that our students get the great education that they deserve.
And as a group, we are still working on reaching out to other school districts, so hopefully we'll have at least the rest of Iowa behind us, if not larger than that. We're hoping to gain more national attention, and we're going to keep pushing and keep fighting because I don't believe there's any cause more worthy than this. So thank you.
All right. Well, that's worthy of another round of applause. Wow. I tell you, well, I've been on this board for like 11 or 12 years. I don't think we've ever had a standing ovation, and now we've had 3 of them in, well, clearly less than 2 months. So, but thank you very much. We'll move on with the rest of our meeting.
Thank you.
All right. Oh, we've got student board reports. All right, we're going to move on to student board reports. Superintendent
We'll
Tate.
start with Rachel.
So recently this weekend, we've had our spring musical at North, and it was a huge success. But we got a lot of good feedback from people that have seen the show, and I'm very proud of the very talented cast, crew, and pit that have worked hard on it. So I'm glad it went well. And then this weekend, we have state solo and ensembles, so good luck to all of our groups going there.
We've had 2 Wildcats earn All-State honors. Sophomore Jaciana Stowers received first team recognition from the Iowa Newspaper Association, and sophomore Janaea Houston received second team honors. So congratulations to them.
This last weekend, West performed their spring play, Almost Maine. It was a really great play that came together in a month, so that was really exciting for them. And then we had about 10 entries in Congressman Loebsack's Congressional Art Contest, which will have voting taking place here soon.
Our Special Olympics track team competed in a meet last week. Every team member won at least one event, and they're all going to state in May. We're having our blood drive this Thursday. And yesterday, the Our City movement, which is made up of students at Central, we held a Ideas Festival at the Figge Art Museum. We're trying to mobilize millennials to make downtown Davenport more vibrant. And so there's a presentation on Davenport's past, and then there is a panel discussion with leaders in the businesses downtown. And then we broke into group discussions, which Director Dickman and Kluhl helped lead those, where we talked about how youth can get involved in the city and just what we can do to make downtown more of a world-class city.
Thank you, students. Appreciate that.
Okay, thank you. Director Crumwoody, you want to go ahead and lead us in the book discussion?
Thank you, Mr. President. At our last board meeting, the Committee of the Whole, on April the 6th, we began our discussion on Dr. Beagle's book, See Poverty Be the Difference. And the reason for our book study is because it is one of our goals, and Director Dickman read our goal earlier, and I'm going to read it quickly again, to direct and support actions, programs, and activities which reduce the impacts of poverty on our students, their families, and our community. We also talked about the schedule for our book studies, and we're going to be doing these during the first 30 minutes of the first part of each of our board meetings. We have 2 left, one in April, the end of April, I think it's the 27th, and then the first one in May. Last time when we met, we talked about Chapter 1, and it had to do with building a foundation to better understand the different types of poverty in the country and some of those issues of poverty that impact folks throughout the country and especially here in Davenport. Tonight we're going to be discussing Chapter 2 and how we might better serve our families and our students in poverty situations. We want to honor our 30-minute time period, so I'm going to ask board members that we kind of keep track of where we're at. We have, I believe it's 5 questions that we have put together. Hopefully you'll have your books with you because we may make reference to some parts of the book. And we thank Rachel for leading us tonight with the PowerPoint. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Director Hayes, and she's going to begin with question number 1.
Okay, question number 1 is the 5 strength perspective principles can be used as a guide for framing services and learning that makes a difference for people in poverty. What are these and how might we as a school board use them? Basically, overall, it's our way of thinking. Everyone has various strengths that need to be listened to, and middle-class individuals need to become familiar with them. We need to recognize the difficulties that people in poverty face and acknowledge that adversity builds strengths for them in spite of all the problems that they go through. When you dig deep into their situation, you can find various strengths that they're working with, and you have to build upon them. And most of all, respect them, respect their dreams, respect their aspirations, and try to encourage them into doing other things. We need to collaborate with them, listen to them, and help them to learn other avenues, put them in touch with other people, different lifestyles, just introduce everyone to different ideas. And also the environment is full of resources. Just kind of dig deep to discover their talents and other things that they have to offer, and most importantly, provide lots of praise because that's needed.
Okay, now we open up to the board. Do you have any comments about the 5 strength perspective principles that she brought out, and how it might apply to us as a school board? President Schwanson.
I do. I hate to lead off in a discussion, but one of the things that happened when I was reading it, I actually thought that a lot of these apply to people in general. And I think of you as Dr. Relationship, and that you have always tried to guide us in a lot of these things. I think recognizing and supporting people is really, really important. I think it's difficult because it takes time. It takes some empathy. And that's part of it. As I was reading it, I thought it's very, very difficult. And some of the people in poverty that we're talking about, trying to communicate, and that was part of our last discussion, I think is sometimes difficult, and we do use different language, and we think different. But I do think that the idea of trying to support everybody, I think is fantastic. I think it just takes so much time and effort, and a lot of us are too busy to do it.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else? Dr. Tate.
This is great to pause and think about, because I believe we think when people in poverty, they're impoverished, they have needs, and they're perhaps we think of them as weak, and really they have life lessons that many of us have never ever experienced, which brings them strength. And what I got from this is we really need to dig to find, they use the word assets, what those assets are, and how we can build on them as well as they can point out. So it really made me stop and think a different way.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Maria?
I was just rereading these 5 points here, and the one that kind of stuck with me is that dreams, aspirations, and desires must be respected even if they appear to be set too high. And I think that our commander-in-chief is kind of a prime example of that no one would have expected 30 years ago that was even a possibility. And so if any of our students, I think that's something that we, as the leaders of the district, have to also then have down the chain, that if a kid goes up to their teacher and says, well, I want to be president, I want to be an astronaut, I want to be an astrophysicist, that they say, yes, what's the next step to get there?
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, and I think in contrast as well, that something that I've gotten from the book is that so many people, youth that are in poverty, don't believe they have a future. They don't, you ask them, what do you want to be? And they can't articulate it. They can't, because they've never been told or, encouraged to dream to be a person that is in a job that provides a living wage and that they would have a home and the basic necessities of life. So often there's just, living from day to day that they can't even think about that. So in our position to make sure that we're giving children the ability and opportunity to dream and to understand that they do have a future that can be beyond what they have known and experienced.
Just one last comment about this first question. When we think about Dr. Beagle and her background in generational poverty and the strengths that she had, and had that been overlooked, hundreds of people would not have been helped, and this woman did help many, many people and has helped and continues to help many people in poverty. And that's one example. Just before the meeting, I had a conversation with Bob Babcock. Bob is on our poverty committee. He's here tonight in the audience. And Bob was sharing with me that he had a conversation with a homeless gentleman, and this gentleman has already written one book of poetry, and he's writing another one. And I'm thinking, there's probably so many people out there with so many strengths, and because they are in poverty situations, that we're just overlooking them. So anyway, a lot to think about. So going on to question 2, how might we go about building closer relationships with people in poverty? And Dr. Beagle talked about this relationship development theory, and if you want to reference it, it starts on page 92, and she talks about different stages. So let's talk about that a little bit. How might we better build relationships with folks in poverty? Maria?
I think the poverty sensitivity training, I don't remember where she mentioned it, but talking about how these different stages for the audience. Stage 1 is it's very short, very professional, something that I would say most professionals are encouraged to keep that kind of relationship with those they're helping in poverty right now. But it's actually in stage 2 where they start sharing personal stories and they can start to really build a connection, that's when it would actually help someone who is in poverty, that they could begin to trust the professional that is trying to help them. And that stage 3 is the more intense, something that you would have with the family or a very close friend. But it's just become just common routine, to have professionals distance themselves as a way of attempting to help the people who are in poverty, but it's actually not distancing themselves that would be the most beneficial. So having that poverty sensitivity training for everyone, so that they understand that it's okay to build a relationship, it's okay to share personal stories.
Thank you.
One thing that I really honed in on is the fact that she says basically show yourself as a real person with real problems. You're able to or individuals in poverty are more able to identify with you when they see that you have problems just like they do, rather than putting you almost like the untouchable, that you're just like they are, you just had different opportunities.
Anyone else?
Well, Director Dickman talked about stories, and I think about the stories we tell, and I think stories are so important. They're part of our culture. They describe who we are as individuals and as people. And I'm thinking of us and them, the words us and them. Now, granted, there are language differences between people in poverty and middle-class people and people of wealth. There are language barriers. And I'm trying to think of that chasm between the people of poverty, them, and us, the middle class, most of us in the middle class. That chasm is deep, and when we try to tell our stories to one another, we come across these language barriers. And so a person from poverty starts to tell me the story, but as Beagle talks about, social workers will interrupt her because they're moving through that story in a different way than people from poverty do. So that language breakdown continues to happen to keep us from telling our stories to one another, which is vitally important. So as we work through this material, I look forward to learning how it is that we can do that. And of course, that will be the goal, I think, on May 4th when we get together and actually talk about what it is from this book that we can bring forward to our district. So I'm staying tuned with this at this point.
Okay. Thanks, Rich. Anyone else? This section, oh, I'm sorry.
Can I say something?
President Johansson, of course.
You know, I was thinking about all of these questions, and I was thinking that part of what we're doing right here is we're trying to learn. And we've had leaders in our district, leaders on our board. Director Sherwood really helped us focus on some of these areas, and in fact the whole board a long time ago, I don't know if it was a year ago, we established these 2 priorities. But the question is, how might we go about building closer relationships with people in poverty? And I think, as Director Kluhl said, we'll stay tuned. But I think also the leadership from now Director Crumwitty and Director Hayes, as they're helping us go through this and helping our board understand, our district understand, and hopefully some in our community understand more. And I think that is part of how we go about, which is actually learning. So I wanted to say thank you for your leadership and training.
This conversation reminds me a bit of a diversity training that I had at St. Ambrose about 6 weeks ago. And the presenter was talking about diversity not in terms of the traditional modes of thinking, but more as cultural differences and the differences and similarities in our experiences. And I think that's what Dr. Beagle's trying to touch upon. And so we did an exercise where we all sat around the room, and it was, you know, kind of like a musical chairs thing where you're 1 chair short. And there was a person in the middle, and they said, and so there were a series of questions, and they started out very simple, you know, how many of us wear glasses? And then you had to switch seats if you had that similarity. But then as you went on, it was how many of you have a family member who's been in jail? How many of you know someone who has had a drug addiction? How many of you may have experienced a mental health issue? And so as you went through this series of exercises, you saw how there were so many similarities among the group, and those things that you would traditionally think of, you know, what's your race, what's your ethnicity, what's your heritage, became less important, and you really focused upon the things that were the same. And it was really a great exercise that I found very, you know, enlightening in going through that process. So, yeah, it's just, again, a way and effort to find ways to connect and realize that you're not as different as you may think by your external appearances.
Maria shared these 3 stages, and I think if you haven't, actually there's 5 stages, not 3. If you haven't read that section, you might want to go back through those, because this is exactly what Dr. Beagle does in her navigator training. She goes through these different stages and helping people to understand that in the navigator training, and for the audience's information, Dr. Beagle is coming in next weekend to do what she calls navigator training. And social agencies in our community have gotten together, and I don't know exactly the number, but I believe it's around 100. I'm not sure. Folks, families in poverty. And we're trying to come up with enough navigators to assist what she calls folks in poverty are referred to as neighbors. And the navigators are there to assist them. And the very first stage is exactly what is going to happen next Saturday, pretty much, is the initiation stage for the most part, and probably getting into stage 2, the experimentation stage, a little bit. But it's just getting acquainted with the folks, and it may just be getting to know who they are, their names. So it's these 5 stages are very important, because in dealing with folks in poverty, you know, I grew up in a situation where I thought I was in poverty until she really taught me what poverty was all about. It's like I was in a situational poverty situation for a while, but I always had a roof over my head. I always had a place to sleep, those kinds of situations where there are many folks who don't have that. And so we have to learn from them first before we can actually assist them and help them to find the resources that they need. So anyway, going on. Director Hayes.
How do we better communicate and understand people in poverty? As Director Kluhl mentioned, the us and they, that is pretty much a harsh term, but it's almost we. The advantage and the disadvantage sounds more appropriate with that. We identify with the language and show empathy, support, empower them, validate what's going on in the lives. Let them know that it's okay, that you're there to support them. You set boundaries with it, but you also have expectations and allow them to kind of experiment with things and encourage them for time management to get going. Other internal assets basically include to put forth that commitment to learning, to have positive values for social competency, make positive choices, something that a lot of individuals are not clear on, and that's probably has a lot to do with no clear boundaries having been set. And just identify with your own powers and your worths. And, you know, when I was reading this, one thing that I thought about, and it was so timely with the Madison theory. Dr. Tate sent out information regarding Madison, and I thought, you know, that would be a wonderful theory if we could share that throughout the entire district and everyone start at an early age to kind of model themselves and help themselves out of poverty, to just let someone know that, you know, we care about you. We care what's going on in your life. We're interested in what's working with you and to help you work better for yourselves.
Okay. Any comments? Rich?
Yeah, I think that communication is really important, and we've talked about this before. I think it was probably Director Sherwood, Director Robertson brought it up as the communication channels that we use to people of poverty are problematic, because if we think that people of poverty are watching our webpage to look for information, it's probably wrong. Beagle says that the preferred communication channel of poverty is vocal. It's word of mouth. And I think that's one lesson that we have that I had discounted that to some extent, because I know that many people, even low SES people, have smartphone technology now. But it still seems to be the case that the way to get to people, and again, I hate to use this we, them thing, because you're right, the bridge is we, to find where we are. But until that time, it's us and them, and we need to bridge that gap. But I think that we have to recognize that until that time happens, we need to find other ways to communicate. And I know we have our telephone system, and that may be one way, but it's almost like it's neighbor to neighbor, and how we create that. And perhaps that's through our faith-based institutions, which we're working with, of course, as well. So that communication piece is so important. You're right.
Maria?
I hope the board will forgive me for a slight tangent here. I realize that most of our audience probably was not at the last meeting, and so they're unaware of some of the background. I just wanted to go over a quick. Dr. Beagle grew up in generational poverty. So everyone that she knew around her had just gotten by minimum wage jobs. Education was not something that caused their life to get better. Education was a stressor, an additional thing that they had to do. And so this is her story of having someone reach out to her, and so she got her GED, and then she continued to progress on all the way into getting her doctorate. And so the question that we're on right now, if I'm following correctly, is how do we communicate and better understand people who are in poverty? We're trying to find the best way to find the new Dr. Beagles in our system who just we haven't been able to communicate with them properly on how they can use education to make their lives better, and how to model for them that they can advance themselves as far as they want to, and that we will try to offer them any services and support that we can.
Thank you, Maria. Anyone else? Art?
Page 106 has a list of the 5 powerful communication strategies, and I think about that in the classroom we like to meet every type of learning style, but also every sort of economic situation too. And just quickly, it's telling stories, modeling appropriate behavior, developing relationships as you share information, using simple familiar words and examples, and giving information verbally and repeatedly frequently. I mean, that's good advice for any teacher, but I could certainly see us having a list like this just to remind teachers.
Okay. Thank you. Any other comments about this question? Okay, I think we're ready to move on to question number 4. So what mentoring practices are most effective in working with individuals in poverty? And if you want to reference page 112, she talks about some of the practices. First of all, believing in the individual that you're dealing with, and helping to build networks of support. Helping them through the process. I don't know if any of you have ever been to the Social Security office, but I have. And it's not an easy task to get through the Social Security office. It's very complicated. When you walk in, it's even kind of scary because they have a federal guard there with a gun, and it's like, wow, that's scary enough just walking in. So helping people through the process in some situations, and that's what folks as navigators or mentors might be doing. And believe that there's a way out of poverty situations. Some folks actually believe, people who are in poverty believe they can't get out of poverty, and for those of us who see some people in poverty are convinced they're not going to get out of poverty. So have a belief that, yes, people can get out of poverty, and, using Dr. Beagle as an example, and a strong example. Maria filled in the audience about her background. She's the only child in this family that ever graduated from high school. All of her siblings ended up in jail, in prison, and couldn't even read or write till she was a sophomore in college. Called her brothers in prison to get information because they had been taught how to read and write in prison and had access to libraries in prison. So it's quite a fascinating background that she has. and for us to develop a backpack of information. And our administration has already started that process. We have a resource guide that has been developed already in our district, and that could be part of our backpack of information to help families, to help them with resources, to give them direction. And again, going back to helping them through the process, not just handing them this resource, because once again, they may not be able to read the information. They need to, we need to make sure that they understand what the resources might be and help them through that process. For those of us who are mentoring, to have what she refers to as poverty competency, and to, there's some thinking that some people just don't want to work, but we need to have some sort of understanding as mentors that if it's just a minimal wage job, that still they may not get out of poverty if they have children at home and they need child care and they need transportation and all these other issues. And board members, you can go through the rest of these, but do you have any comments about for mentoring and being a successful mentor? Nikki?
I'm glad you added that clarification to talking about having a resource backpack, and that it's not enough to be able to say, here, take this pamphlet and it'll tell you what you need to do to find help. It really is active engagement of the person serving as the mentor navigator who is going to be able to make a difference for that individual and help them find the resources they need, not just, have it in a nice little bundle for them. That was the biggest takeaway for me. And, that whole competency of poverty and, the questions that she asked that I'm sure that most of us couldn't answer. If you're, evicted, what's the number to the local homeless shelter? Where, if you need medical care, where is the place that you can go to get that care? And it's easily attainable, but it is a time consumption, but something that in the long run will pay off tremendously, I think.
And I just have to throw out, our poverty committee, we have about 40 folks on our district poverty committee, and we have just a great cross-section of people from the community, different social agencies, cities involved, counties involved, and I'm thinking of housing, for example, and I know that we have people on our poverty committee that are connected to housing situations in our city and to assist people with housing. And that's the kind of information that we're trying to generate for our school district also, so we can also assist when they come into our schools and have a housing need, so we can go right to the source and say, here's how we can help you. So any other comments about question number 4?
It goes without saying that poverty is a huge obstacle for us to work with, and we can't go it alone. We're going to have to collaborate, and I'm thinking of the fact that whatever mentoring practices we do, the best and most cost-efficient practices are going to be early on. I mean, we do have our programs, our dropout prevention programs that we can't let go. We've got to do those things, but in terms of the best bang for the buck, it's going to be putting that money up front. I'm thinking of Scott County Kids Early Childhood Iowa, as a matter of fact. They have a Parenting Inside Out program that we support, which we have a group of people that go into prisons where our local jails where dads are about to come out and know nothing about fathering. And so this group goes in and mentors these to-be or currently fathers so that when they come out of imprisonment, they will be able to be dads to their children. So I think that we will need to find some strong connections with the early childhood community in terms of doing effective mentoring practices. We need partners.
Thank you. Let's move on to question number 5. We have about 5 more minutes, and this is a this is a powerful question. So, Director Hayes.
Okay, our last question here. What are some of the recommendations that Dr. Beagle makes for improving educational opportunities for students in poverty? One thing that struck me that I felt was most important of all the reading was basically to meet individuals where they are. You know, people learn in different forms, whether it's oral or whether it's written communication. If you throw a book in front of a person that hates to read, can't read, no utilities and lights to read, you're not helping them at all. If you can talk through the situation, maybe they can retain a little bit more than they can get in the written form. So you basically just have to meet them where they are and know what they're needing and not be afraid to ask them what type of help they need directly, relate to them, and just try to build that relationship with them so they're comfortable to tell you exactly what they need and what you can do to help.
Yeah, I think that's really important. We had a former legislative advocacy committee member that said you got to meet people where they are, not where you want them to be. And it would be easy for us to talk with people as if they were where they needed to be, but they're not there. And to do that probably just further distances them. So meeting them where they're at, I believe, is very important. I agree.
Any other thoughts? Well, I just want to refer you again to pages 137 through, I believe it's 140. She gives quite a few recommendations, first of all, to the people in poverty situations. And she gives out some recommendations to teachers, to administrators, and to social service agencies, and to us. So those are thoughts that we should keep in mind, especially for our last session when we're talking about, so what actions are we going to take? And with that, any comments?
Well, since you mentioned that they're all listed here nicely, something that we could consider is putting this on a document that could be handed out by school secretaries for people who come in saying, I need help with something, and then handing out the teacher recommendations to our teachers and administrator recommendations to our administrators.
Other thoughts? Linda?
You know, one form that I put together, I work with a lot of disadvantaged people, and I'll have people just call me in just tears trying to figure out, well, I need this, or I'm going to have my utilities turned off, and just trying to pull together to find different resources. I've come up with this little pamphlet, Are You Needing Help? And I have shelters in there, I have food pantries in there, I have clothing closets in there, and even just calling. You know, sometimes people just call and they're so distraught they have no idea where even to begin. They'll say, well, can you pray with me? And then we go into prayer. So basically with that, I've developed this little brochure, basically. If this is your problem, this is what you can do. This is what I can do for you. And it seems to help a lot of individuals out.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, with that, I commented on May the 3rd, and for us to think about some actions on May the 3rd that we might take, or I believe it's May the 4th. Also, just to let you know, I've contacted Dr. Beagle's office, and I've shared this with Dr. Tate. We're thinking perhaps of Skyping with her on May the 4th while we're interacting at the Committee of the Whole on May the 4th. So it may or may not work. We're checking on that. So our next session is, I believe, on the 27th, and that's our third chapter. Yes, it's the 27th, and it's laying the foundations for institutional and systemic change. So with that, thank you for your interaction, and exciting stuff, good stuff.
It is good stuff. Thank you very much. Thank you, Director Hayes, and thank you, Director Crumwoody. We'll move on to the next presentation, which is a special presentation by Mr. Bill Decker, the Chief Administrator of the Mississippi Bend Area Education Agency. Director Crumwoody and I visited with Mr. Decker a couple of weeks ago, and he was talking about leadership, and as we talked more about it and the effects of leadership on everything we're doing, we thought this would be great, and I just wanted to say thank you very much for gracing us with your presence here and helping us learn more. So the floor is yours, Mr. Decker.
Thank you, Director Johansson. It's a pleasure to be here. It's I think my opportunity to be here as opposed to you thanking me. The AEA is a proud partner with the Davenport schools. We recognize the dedication of this board. Very impressed with the conversation that we were having of the efforts of advocacy that this board has taken on over the years. It's not just a one-time reaction to an issue that Dr. Tate just somehow pulled out of the air. It's a long-term effort, and I hope the community recognizes and respects the efforts of the board and Dr. Tate. You know, the AEA does work hard. It's been my pleasure to work at strengthening our partnership between the AEA and the Davenport schools, and basically, you know, to better serve students of all shapes and sizes. You know, the poverty piece doesn't change the fact that we all have more in common than we have difference, and so I respect that conversation as well. But getting to the point of my invitation to be here, I was talking to Directors Johansson and Crumweedy about a short video that I came across that kind of puts this in perspective in a fun and humorous way. And I think, you know, there are really a good opportunity for the community of Davenport at first, but then even to go beyond the community of Davenport across the state, because there are not a majority, but almost a majority. Almost half the districts in the state are in the same position that Davenport is, as far as students being worth less. And that is not a good position for students in Iowa. It's not a good position for the communities that are affected that way. And so I'd like to let us have a little bit of fun, but then bring it back to a serious conversation about what needs to happen throughout the community of Davenport and also across the state of Iowa. So I don't know if we are ready with a video that I had sent over or not. Yeah. Okay.
Ooh, really?
Oh, it was sent by email this morning.
Can you access that?
Actually, if there's a computer, I can probably just get it up. Okay.
I apologize for that. Our regular board secretary had to leave on a personal agenda, and so Brenda, the superintendent's secretary, is filling in. So I apologize for any confusion.
You've tested my ability to get back into a Windows computer environment, because I usually work.
Rachel, can we get into this here?
We have 4 people.
Isn't it great having 50 people looking over your shoulder while you do this?
Well, it does put a little pressure on, but I'm hanging in there.
You're sweating on the keyboard there.
It's a sign of a good leader, right?
So am what I'm putting up there? Okay. Cool. So let's just enjoy this.
If you've learned a lot about leadership and making a movement, then let's watch a movement happen start to finish in under 3 minutes and dissect some lessons. First, of course, a leader needs the guts to stand alone and look ridiculous. But what he's doing is so simple, it's almost instructional. This is key. You must be easy to follow. Now here comes the first follower with a crucial role.
Okay, so I would just interrupt this a couple times. I'm not trying to imply that Dr. Tate's a crazy guy, but there are some people that thought his note and his speech was a little on the crazy side. But you know, it does take courage to be that leader. But the story doesn't end there, so let's keep watching. But understand, I'm not calling Dr. Tate a crazy guy here.
He publicly shows everyone else how to follow. Notice how the leader embraces him as an equal. So it's not about the leader anymore, it's about them, plural. Notice how he's calling to his friends to join in. See, it takes guts to be a first follower. You stand out and you brave ridicule yourself. Being a first follower is an underappreciated form of leadership. The first follower transforms a lone nut into a leader. If the leader is the flint, the first follower is the spark that really makes the fire. Now here's the second follower. This is a turning point. It's proof the first has done well. Now it's not a lone nut and it's not two nuts. 3 is a crowd and a crowd is news. A movement must be public. Make sure outsiders see more than just the leader. Everyone needs to see the followers because new followers emulate followers, not the leader. Now here come 2 more people, then 3 more immediately. Now we've got momentum. This is the tipping point, and now we have a movement. As more people jump in, it's no longer risky. If they were on the fence before, there's no reason not to join in now. They won't stand out, they won't be ridiculed, and they will be part of the in crowd if they hurry. And over the next minute you'll see the rest who prefer to stay part of the crowd, because eventually they'd be ridiculed for not joining. And ladies and gentlemen, that is how a movement is made. So let's recap what we've learned. If you are a version of the shirtless dancing guy, all alone, remember the importance of nurturing your first few followers as equals, making everything clearly about the movement, not you. Be public, be easy to follow. But the biggest lesson here, did you catch it? Leadership is overglorified. Yes, it started with the shirtless guy, and he'll get all the credit, but you saw what really happened. It was the first follower that transformed a lone nut into a leader. There's no movement without the first follower. See, we're told that we all need to be leaders, but that would be really ineffective. The best way to make a movement, if you really care, is to courageously follow and show others how to follow. When you find a lone nut doing something great, have the guts to be the first person to stand up and join in.
Okay, so I told you we were going to have a little bit of fun. So can I join you? But there are many things in there that are worth paying attention to. And I think you can look at it a number of different ways. I got here when the students were still here in the audience and the board was congratulating them and appreciating their efforts. And that's kind of one of the first followers. And they play a key role. But I guess the message that I want to send, not so much to the board, but to the community, is that the comment was made earlier that students are worth 3 of the adults that are there. But in today's legislative world, business owners and citizens probably count that 3 as well, if not sometimes maybe more. And so if you're a business owner and you are in the Davenport community, if you are a citizen in the Davenport community, there's a follower opportunity here to make a huge difference. I don't know if you're a business owner in the Davenport community, if you feel like your taxes should bring less money to the students of your community than the taxes of the students of another community. That just doesn't seem right. And I think your students have clearly recognized that, and I know Dr. Tate and the board have recognized that. If you're a citizen, it's not so much about do you want to pay more taxes, it's do you want equity? Do you want your taxes to bring the same thing to your students in your community that they do in other communities? And it's worth fighting for. It is something that can make a big difference for not only Davenport, but for communities all over the state of Iowa. And I just commend Dr. Tate for being that lone nut. No, I'm just kidding, Art, I'm just kidding. For being a leader, to take that courageous stand, for the board and supporting your superintendent, and for the students to be some of those first followers. I know there's been good media coverage. I have appreciated that as I've seen that. I know that there has been, some other adult interest, but the idea of having businesses and community members contact legislators is priceless. And so I'm just here to encourage that. I'm here to congratulate the efforts of the board and Dr. Tate, and hopefully that follower mentality can turn into something that's really good, not only for the students of Davenport, but for students across the state. So thank you for the invitation to be here.
Wow, that was amazing. Mr. Decker, well, don't leave quite yet. Are there any questions or comments for Mr. Decker? Director Crumity.
Well, Bill, I just want to thank you for taking the time to come and speak to us. Art is kind of a nut, but we're all right there ready to follow him. And we have a lot of followers in this community already, and we are really making a lot of effort to get followers, not only in this community, but also businesses and other communities across the state. So hopefully we can get that whole crowd, just like we saw in the video. So we can make a difference, and we will make a difference. I'm convinced of that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? Director Kluhl.
Yeah, on the nut analogy, it's just interesting how one nut engenders another. I mean, we had the superintendent nut, followed by Julie DeSalvo, a nut, Bob Babcock, a nut, Vera, who was a nut, and we've had a lot of nuts out there. So, thank you, Superintendent Nutt.
All right, anybody else? Well, I tell you, it's good to have a lot of fun, and Bill, when we did visit with you a couple of weeks ago, you were very inspiring, just describing that video, and I really appreciate your sharing that with us, your leadership in the AEA, but also coming here and helping us and helping our community and hopefully helping our state to get behind this effort. So, thanks a lot.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right. Well, we're just about ready to get on with regular business. But I have to say, these are some fun meetings. We'll move on to upcoming events. Director Kluhl, will you please review those for us?
Sure. Glad to. On April 14th, the Local School Improvement Advisory Committee will meet at 5:30 here in the Jim Hester Boardroom. April 16th, the 10 through 20-year service recognition event is going to be held 4:30 to 6:30 at the River Music Experience in Davenport. April 21st is the annual retirement dinner, 5 to 9 p.m. at the Radisson. April 27th is our regular meeting at 6 p.m. here in the Jim Hester Boardroom. And May 4th will be our Committee of the Whole here in the boardroom, where we'll have our final concluding wrap-up of the poverty book discussion. The 5th of May at 3 p.m. is the Legislative Advocacy Committee meeting in the Executive Boardroom. May 6th, 4 p.m. is the Policy Committee in the Executive Boardroom. May 11th is the 6 p.m. regular meeting here. And May 25th will be a holiday, and things will be closed up. And the 26th of May, which is a Tuesday, We'll have our 6 p.m. regular meeting of the school board here in the Jim Hester boardroom.
Thank you. Next is open forum, and we have 3 open forum requests tonight. Open forum is a time for members of the community to give input at a board meeting regarding school district issues or concerns. Individuals who want to speak should fill out an open forum request and give it to the board secretary prior to open forum. The board will not act on any issue presented during open forum if it was not published as an agenda item. The Iowa Open Meetings Law prohibits action on any issue that is not on the agenda. The president will set the amount of time allowed for individuals to speak during open forum. The board asks that no charges or complaints be made against individual employees of the district or community during open forum. Remarks that reflect negatively on the character or motives of any person will be called out of order. The 3 and you will each have 2 minutes in this order. First is Shannon Riley. Next will be Sally Ellis, and last will be Patrick Wader. And please come up to the microphone, state your name and address for the record. Shannon?
Yes, I'm Shannon Riley, and I'm also a child care provider here for Davenport Community School District students. In my care, I have 12 children, 2 of them being my own. Currently, I have 3 students attending the Wood Intermediate School.
And give us your address, too.
1909 West 68th Street, Davenport, 52806. With the increased population here in our immediate area, I'm finding that the Wood parking lot is becoming increasingly dangerous, not only to the students, but also to the staff. Their parking lot is in desperate need of repainting. We also have no accessible light for southbound traffic. That has caused us to go at least 1.5 miles out of our way in order to come all the way around. If you look at my pictures here, there are times where I've waited 6 lights to get my student to school, in which back in January, I received a letter saying my daughter was going to be disciplined for not being to school on time through no fault of her own, which I don't think is fair. My other students are also receiving the same notices saying that they have tardies in which they're going to start having to serve silent lunches. An aerial photograph, you can barely make out any of the painting of the lines. As soon as you enter the parking lot, I'm being told that I'm supposed to follow the arrows. It's saying I'm going the wrong way immediately. So when you do finally get access, it's total chaos. You have people that are back flowing to follow the arrows as traffic is trying to come in. There's only 1 lane coming in, 2 lanes coming out. We really do need a left turn signal at that intersection. Also, a sign stating no right turn for our northbound lanes would also help. And also not allowing any parking around the drop-off pickup areas would be also helpful. I've noticed that that's created a lot of bottlenecking. Students are being dropped off in the city bus lane. Students are being dropped off in the middle of Division Street. And I don't need to say how dangerous that could possibly be. I've almost seen, I don't know how many accidents so far this year, and it just scares me. The other thing is that there is so much chaos here in the parking lot. How would a fire truck or an ambulance come to the rescue of any student, staff, or parent needing help?
Shannon, your 2 minutes are up, but I
Okay.
appreciate what you've said, and please come to other meetings if you didn't get everything addressed, okay?
Sure.
All right, thank you very much.
Be glad to. Thank you.
Next is Sally Ellis.
I promised a minute, time me. This is a present for Dr. Tate's wife because I feel that I gave him a present, and I got to thinking about it, and I think she needs one too because
Sally, I don't know if you gave your name and address.
Oh, darn it.
I'm sorry.
Darn it. Sally Ellis, 2216 North Nevada, Davenport, Iowa. This is a present for you, for your wife. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sally. And our last open forum speaker tonight is Patrick Wader.
My name is Patrick Wader. I live at 315 East 15th Street, Davenport, Iowa. We would like to give this banner to the Davenport Community School District to show Dr. Tate, the school board, and the entire district we support education. Thank you, Dr. Tate and the school board, for all you do for us kids.
Director DeFau.
Yeah. If I may interject for just a moment, earlier this evening we were talking about the parents and community members who are making a difference, and Jennifer is doing the same, being there advocating for our students, organizing these rallies in support of Dr. Tate, and I really appreciate everything that you've been doing as well. And she also has a Facebook page if anybody's interested. We support Dr. Tate, I believe. Yes, so there's good information posted there. I'd encourage those that have Facebook to join the group. So thanks for everything that you're doing as well.
Thank you, Director DeFau. Additionally, hang on,
Wait.
please. I know you're in a rush to get out of here, but I appreciate that, and for everybody, a lot of the people here have been here outside all day long, out along Brady, supporting Dr. Tate. Along with this banner, this signed banner, I have several letters here, and I'm going to read part of the first one, and you'll get the idea. This is dated today. It's to the Honorable Chris Braze, Iowa State Senate, 1007 East Grand Avenue, Des Moines, Iowa, 50319. Dear Senator Braze, thank you for your hard work and your support of the students of Davenport Community School District. Keep up the good fight. Respectfully, and I'm sure you can't all see the signatures here, but there are probably, I'm going to guess there are 100 signatures on each one of these. And so we have these letters that will go to the Honorable Jim Lycum, the Honorable Phyllis Thede, the Honorable Linda Miller, the Honorable Cindy Winkler, the Honorable Ross Postian, the Honorable Robbie Smith, the Honorable Joe Sang. And this is part of what Mr. Decker was talking about, the following, everything that all of you are doing. Patrick, you've been amazing through all this. You really have. To think about all of the work that you're doing, the things that you're learning, the advocacy that you're doing, and of course, your mom, you've been doing wonderful as well. And but all of these efforts are the right thing to do. And Sally, my gosh, you've been with us. You've been one of those following nuts, I guess, the whole time, huh? So anyway, I'm overwhelmed with the work that you all have done, and we'll make sure that we get these out to the legislators tomorrow. So thank you very much for your work. All right? Another round of applause, I think. Yeah. Oh, my gosh. Jeez, Rich. And Shannon, before you go, and I apologize, I got into thanking everybody else, but I wanted to thank you for your advocacy as well. It's really important to come and to let us know these things, and we'll see what we can do in taking care of it.
Parents have complained about it, and I know being on the phone talking about it, it's just being read as, oh, another mad parent calling to complain and air showing the problem that needs to be resolved. And this is a serious safety issue. I believe, like I said, not only for the students, but for the staff and for us parents as well, who have to drive through that parking lot twice a day, every day.
Yep. Well, thank you very much for bringing it to our attention.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, we'll move on to the consent agenda. May I have a motion?
Mr. President,
Director Crumwood.
I move the consent agenda as presented by the administration.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second. Is there any discussion? Okay, we'll call for the vote. Director Crumwood.
Yes.
Director Kluhl.
Yes.
Sorry, I didn't have mine on. Director Snyder.
Yes.
Director Dickman.
Yes.
Director DeFow.
Yes.
Director Hayes.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. May I have a motion regarding approval of bills?
Mr. President,
Director Kluhl.
I move that the board approve the following resolution for the approval of bills. The resolution is as follows. Resolved that all claims presented to the board having been duly certified as correct by the secretary, reviewed by the administration and board members, and they are hereby audited and allowed as just claims and warrants drawn on the treasury for the several amounts. Further resolved, the payment of claims and sales be approved as presented for the periods of March 19, 2015 through April 8, 2015 with the following voided check, that being check number 326171, payable to Davenport Electric in the amount of $6,677.80. That was to the wrong vendor.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Call for the vote. Director Kluhl.
Yes.
Director Dickman.
Yes.
Director Hayes.
Yes.
Director Crumwoody.
Yes.
Director Snyder.
Yes.
Director DeFow.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. Superintendent report.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Army JROTC marching unit was designated the best youth group in the St. Patrick's Day Parade. Do you remember Isaac Anderson? He used to be a board member, Central High School. He was the ROTC commander, and if I'm not mistaken, he was the drum major of the Central Marching Band. We were just notified by his mother. He's been selected as the drum major of the Hawkeye Marching Band.
Cool.
So did very, very well. And I would just like to mention something that Luke talked about, our city movement that was held yesterday in the Figge. This was conceived by students. It was organized by students, put on and led by students. And unfortunately, I can only stay halfway through. I had to go to an ROTC unit dance and ball. But I was very, very impressed with the efficiency and the way that it looked like it's going to be extremely effective. And this seems to just fit perfectly in with the regional vision. So I'm very happy. I'm pleased with what they've done. And what I say to them is keep it going, because we're all worried about many of them are seniors and their great leadership is going to go. So we hope that we'll see people take their place, because it needs to continue. So great job.
All right. Thank you very much. We'll move on to other items requiring action.
Mr. President,
Director DeFow.
I'd like to make this in two separate motions. So,
Okay, go ahead.
I ask that the board accept the policy committee's recommendation and approve the following policy: 80101 board committees.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there discussion, Director DeFow?
This is a policy that we discussed previously and removed until this meeting based upon a concern expressed by Director Kluhl. We had forwarded it to our legal counsel, who gave her opinion and did make some language changes to clarify the appropriate roles for committees as opposed to the board itself. So I trust that it's satisfactory to Director Kluhl.
Yeah, I just want to say that this is a streamlined policy. I really like it.
Great.
Feel very comfortable with it.
Okay.
Is
And
there, oh, I'm sorry.
I was just going to, any other comments?
All right, very good. We'll go ahead and vote. Director DeFau.
Yes.
Director Kluel.
Yes.
Director Hayes.
Yes.
Director Crumwoody.
Yes.
Director Snyder.
Yes.
Director Dickman.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. Director DeFau, would you make another motion?
Yes. I move that the board accept the policy committee's recommendation and approve the following policy: 401.26 activity/athletic passes.
May I have a second?
A second.
Is there any discussion? Director DeFau.
No, I would just add that the policy committee undertook a concern that was expressed by a member of the school district staff regarding the year limitations relevant to gold passes, and that we were asked to consider dropping that year stipulation, and that any retiree would be eligible to receive a gold pass upon their retirement. The policy committee heard that concern and agreed with it.
Thank you.
And that's the only change.
Okay. Any additional discussion? Director Kluel.
It appears that I'm a representative representing the senior citizen pass. I just was curious how you came up with 62 as the age.
I think that was the year that was listed previously, and we didn't touch it at the original time, and we didn't seek to modify it now. You would prefer?
Well, no, I will accept that date with the extreme reluctance, because I feel like that's not really my category, but I recognize that there are a lot of groups out there that saying that it is.
It is.
It is?
Oh, as a senior citizen?
All right.
Okay, any additional discussion? I feel kind of bad about that.
Well, I do too, but it's a circle of life.
All right, we'll go ahead and vote then. Director DeFau.
Yes.
Director Hayes.
Yes.
Director Kluel.
Yes.
Director Crumwoody.
Yes.
Director Snyder.
Yes.
Director Dickman.
Yes.
Oh,
And my vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you very much.
you will have. Oh, you do?
I do.
Next is a public hearing. Brenda, do I have a special paper for that public hearing? Excuse me for a second while I think about this.
You see the executive content?
Excuse me?
You see your executive content?
Yeah,
That's what she mentioned.
yeah. All right. May I have a motion regarding the public hearing and approval of start date?
Mr. President,
Director Dickman.
I move the administration's recommendation that the board approve August 24th, 2015 as the start date for the 2015-16 school year, school calendar.
Excuse me one more minute here. All right, we will now conduct a public hearing on the start date. Notice of this public hearing was published in the Quad City Times on Friday, April 3rd, 2015. Anyone wishing to speak on this item, please come to the microphone and state your name and address. Director DeFau.
As a matter of protocol, did we get a second on that motion?
No, I believe we did not. Thank you very much for calling that out. Is there a second first on the motion to accept the administration recommendation that the board approve August 24th, 2015 as a start date for the 2015-16 school calendar? Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Okay, Now we will conduct a public hearing on the start date. Notice of this public hearing was published in the Quad City Times on Friday, April 3rd, 2015. Anyone wishing to speak on this item, please come to the microphone and state your name and address. All right. Well, I apologize, I don't have all of the correct words, but I will say, seeing and hearing none, I will call this hearing closed. Is there any additional discussion on this matter? Director DeFoe.
As a point of clarification, we are simply approving the start date and not the draft calendar that was also presented in this action item.
That's correct. Did you want to say anything more about that?
No, that's a question. I would like to hear that from the administration, that we are only approving the start date.
That is true, but the draft calendar has been negotiated, so it is, as soon as this date is approved, it will be the calendar.
I believe I forwarded via email this weekend an email to both you and Mr. Scott that referenced the fact that third term next year, spring break is scheduled to be the week prior to the last week of spring, the last week of third term. So the students would be on break, come back for 3 days of classes, and then take finals. And the last day of finals being Good Friday, in which we have excessive absenteeism in our schools that day, due to the fact that several families choose to observe that as a religious holiday. And so the question was posed to me, and I think it's a very legitimate and valid question: what would be the harm in flipping those so that finals concluded, the semester and the finals concluded, and then we held spring break? And it certainly does make perfect sense to me. I think our student board members, I'd be curious as to your opinion in terms of, the number of students in your classes on Good Friday this year, and whether or not you saw absenteeism.
I know of one family, at least, that they don't go to school on Good Friday, but I didn't notice my classes being especially empty on that day.
I knew of a few. It wasn't excessive absences, but there were notably few people. Fewer.
On a different note, I also think it's a good choice to have spring break after finals. I think having a week off would kind of get all of the students out of the school mode that they're in.
I didn't necessarily notice a huge difference, but I did know that some families did take it, so I kind of noticed a little bit fewer people, but not a large number.
Okay. And I guess I would say that anecdotally, that I had heard out in the community from various people that they did know of several families that were not, having their children attend school that day. But be that as it may, I do think that there is a very valid point, as Rachel said, to having finals conclude before break and then coming back fourth term. That's something that we've attempted to achieve with the end of second term, and now thanks to our governor are unable to do so because of the mandate that we cannot request a start date that is prior to August 24th, and that local control has been taken away from school districts.
Any additional discussion? Director Dickman.
I was also going to share my frustration that our start date, I think last year we had a fantastic discussion about start date, and we had, it was a split decision. We all had our reasons for which date we were advocating for, and just immense frustration that that business and politics is getting in the way of education.
Director Snyder.
I think Director DeFoe's concern is a valid one. We're already putting our high schools behind the 8 ball in regards to testing and being out of the classroom for that period over Christmas break and then coming back, basically burn a week to review for tests so that the following week they can take the tests. And again, it all goes back to this start date. You know, there's a lot of people I've heard that, you know, we're against the state fair. We're not against the state fair. It's unfortunate that all of our students in the state of Iowa are held hostage by the few people that do want to attend the state fair. Kids miss school all the time for things such as National History Day, for athletic events, for all kinds of things. There's nothing saying they can't be taken out of school for a day or two if they have something going on at the fair. But to tell every student in Iowa, you can't start school till after this date to accommodate this handful is just absolutely insane. And so that's my rant. But on the plus side, we are all free to go view the butter cow.
Well, hang on. Are you done, Director Snyder? Okay. Thank you very much. Superintendent Tate.
Just a reminder, this has been negotiated. If the DEA, in fact, wanted to open it up after hearing your comments, they certainly could approach us, and we could go from there. But as it stands right now, this is a mandatory item of bargaining, and we have done that, and it has been set. So we can see where it goes tomorrow.
Any other discussion? So I have a question for the superintendent. If we decided to go, for instance, the 25th, then would that have to be renegotiated?
Yes, because it changes the schedule as it now stands.
So the negotiation was based on the 24th?
Yes. In fact, we had several calendars, so this is one of them that was set.
Any other discussion? I want to chime in that I think that the approach that has been suggested by the board members sure seems to make sense. And if it were possible to reconsider it, I wish it could be. I know that our only role here is to set the start date. But I guess I'll leave it at that. Any additional discussion, Director DeFau?
Yeah, I'd like some clarification when Dr. Tate said if the DEA would consider reopening that negotiation, that there could be a conversation tomorrow. Is there a meeting intended tomorrow, or what is?
There is no meeting. I would just hope it happened as quickly as possible because people are waiting. They want to know what the calendar is going to be. So I would hope that we wouldn't spend several weeks trying to see where we're going with it. That's why I meant it'd be very quickly done, hopefully.
Okay. And have we ever been in a position in the past where we have revisited a draft calendar based upon concerns that were raised at the time of the vote?
Not since I've been here, Mrs. Miller, not you, okay.
And would there be a protocol by which to make a request of the DEA that we would have a meeting in order to have a conversation regarding the concern?
Actually, Rebecca Menard, who's the president, is sitting right back there, and she's just nodding to me that we can get together and discuss it. So
we have a meeting with Dr. Tate on Wednesday.
And I trust from your comment that you would be willing to have a conversation.
Absolutely willing to have a conversation.
Thank you very much. With that, I'd like to make a move to amend the original motion and to postpone until the next regular board meeting the approval of the start date and proposed academic calendar for 2015-16.
Excuse me, I'm just trying to write all this down. I believe what you said was you want to move to amend to postpone,
Amend the original motion to postpone.
amend the original, to postpone until the next regular board meeting and approve the calendar for 2015-16.
To postpone to the next regular board meeting the approval of the start date
Yeah.
and proposed 2015-16 calendar.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Director Crumwood.
Yes, I appreciate Director DeFaw's concern. And I'm going to raise another concern because I don't know all the facts, but I picked up in the newspaper the other day that we have a neighboring district that is going to be able to finish school early because they're going to shorten their winter break. And so if we're going to reopen all these negotiations, maybe that's another thing that we should be looking at. Because our concern about this start date was finals at the end of the year. And so if other surrounding districts can do that and accomplish that, I'm wondering why we can't possibly do the same thing.
Additional discussion. Director Dickman.
Perhaps I misunderstood, but we are only voting on the start date. The administration and the DEA can still work out details of the calendar even if we approve the start date tonight. Is that correct? So I would be in favor of approving the start date since I don't think we're not planning on starting it any later, and as state law seems like it's going, we're not going to be approving it any earlier, and direct the administration to finalize the calendar with some of the accommodations of problems that have been brought up, so that the calendar can go out sooner rather than later once the administration is done making any changes, as opposed to having to wait until the next board meeting, because there are people who are waiting to find out what the calendar is going to be.
Additional discussion. Director Clue.
Dr. Tate, implications from delaying to April 27th?
Families are waiting to know. They're looking to project vacations and things of that nature. So I couldn't tell you how it will affect 2 weeks. I just want you to think of something. It sounds like you're saying, bring us something back that we can accept, and that's not the way negotiations work. Negotiations are two sides. So what if we bring you back something and we say we just can't do it? Are you going to send us back again? So I just want to make sure people understand that we will do our best. We'll look at these things, but it is negotiations, and it has to be approved by both sides.
Additional discussion. I have a question. Director DeFau, what's the intent of the motion to postpone?
As we're I think that's rather clear. I'm asking to postpone in order to allow the DEA and the school district to have the opportunity to review the concern that was expressed by a teacher who is concerned that spring break is going to occur the week prior to finals and put her students in a less than tenable position to take those finals. I mean, plain and simple. I'm asking for consideration.
I think when I think of this, and our only role is to determine the start date, and the DEA has said that they would at least consider this, because we can't really force negotiation. I mean, we could encourage it through changing the start date, because then it would actually force the renegotiation based on a different start date. But a postponement of the decision, they may decide to not even renegotiate.
I understand that, but in the meantime, we're being asked to approve this proposed calendar.
Well,
But it's part of the motion. It is, and granted, we don't have control over it beyond the start date. But when I asked, are we approving just the start date, or are we approving the start date and the school calendar, I was told it was both, that this is the calendar.
I don't know where that came from.
If I misspoke, if that's what you understood. It's just the start date, and again, the draft calendar, what I said, has been negotiated, and if this is the start date, then absent any continued negotiations, that will be the calendar, but I wouldn't be asking you to approve that.
I understand we don't have approval over the specific dates, but it's still the board stamp of approval on the document. Whether it's a matter of perception by the community and our employees that we are accepting, use the word accept if you don't like the word approval, we are accepting the calendar as it's been proposed.
Any additional discussion? Superintendent Tate, can you offer some, and I don't want to get into the negotiations, but could you offer, say, a rationale for the approach to the break and finals testing? Is there a reason for that to be in the way that it is, rather than the way that has been discussed at the board table?
I cannot, my expert is not here. I don't know if Deb and/or if Mrs. Menard wants to make a statement about that.
The reason that it ended up the way it did is kind of what Director DeFaw alluded to before with Governor Branstad's decisions, because we have a 2-year agreement with our teachers, and so the calendar was set back a year ago when we did negotiations for both years, and it was set based on the fact that we've been starting school in or around August 15th, August 18th. Well, this new decision by the governor threw a monkey wrench into that. That it would not have worked out this way in the calendar if we would have started the 18th. It would have been 2 weeks, and then we would have had spring break. So, yeah, that's what happened. And I, we have a good working relationship with DEA. Since you've heard it from a teacher, I would guess that there's lots of teachers who feel the same way, and there would be, I'm going out on a limb, I guess, but I don't think there'd be any reason why we couldn't come to an agreement to flip-flop those 2 weeks. It's not going to do anything to the number of days necessarily in the quarter. We can adjust all of those things pretty easily by just flipping the weeks, I would think. I don't know if you feel the same way, Rebecca, but without speaking for your group, but.
I think that we'd be open for negotiation and discussion.
And I'm sorry to put both of you on the spot. I did send this information over the weekend, hoping that it would be seen and discussed during the course of the day and not coming as a surprise this evening.
Director Kluel.
I have to ask the question, Deb, in terms of supporting student achievement, is the calendar that is provided in draft here preferable to some of the recommendations that have been made this evening?
In terms of the breaks, or?
In terms of the board's goal of student achievement, I'm putting you a bit on the spot, but that is why the board is making this decision. It's about student achievement.
Mhm.
And if one of these would favor student achievement over the other, I would be clear on where I was going with this.
Well, I absolutely believe what Nikki is saying has merit to it. Is that what you're asking? Yeah. In terms of the student achievement, as a former principal, as a former teacher, yes. It doesn't make sense to have a break and then have kids come back for a couple of days and then take a final. And I think teachers would say the same thing.
Students have.
Mm.
Thank you.
Is there any other discussion on the amendment? Director Snyder.
I guess I want to just, I mean, if we've heard that people, and I've heard too, people want to know what the start date's going to be so that they can plan, but if we still don't know the calendar, they still can't plan, so I don't see a problem with delaying it 2 weeks until we have all of our ducks in a row, we know what the calendar and start date will be, and we can make a decision that we know what we're deciding on.
Director Dickman.
I think that the administration, that we've clearly laid out what the goal is of being changed, that if we approve the start date, they can approve the calendar and get that sent out within a matter of days, whereas it would take a full 2 weeks for us to get to another meeting.
Any additional discussion on the amendment? I want to say I really appreciate and respect all the work that's been done in negotiating this, and I understand the complications that we have because of what's been handed down to us as the earliest possible start date, and I'm reluctant to affect those negotiations, and I do think we have all heard about kind of the urgency of the start date. I think that the only difference that we're talking about in the actual calendar, at least the way we know it right now, is in those 2 weeks. There may be some others, but anyway, I want to appreciate the efforts of everybody that was involved in trying to anticipate all this too, because this has been a difficult thing. We've asked for weeks and weeks for the legislature to come up with this. Any additional discussion on the amendment? Director Kluhl.
Just thinking in terms of my reaction to this, I would tend to support the original motion, with the understanding that administration and DEA would work towards a negotiation that meets the issues that the board has brought forward.
Any other discussion? I'll say that I think that the only thing the board can actually do is request that the administration and DEA consider that. I don't think we can ask them to renegotiate or to even address the issues that we've brought up, since it's already negotiated. That's my perspective. Any additional discussion? All right, we're going to call the vote on the amendment. And this amendment, and I apologize for my writing, but it was to postpone this decision on the start date until the next regular board meeting, which is April 27th. And that would be for the calendar year 2015-16. So it's only on the amendment. Director DeFoe.
Yes.
Director Hayes.
Yes.
Director Kluhl.
No.
Director Crumwitty.
Yes.
Director Snyder.
Yes.
Director Dickman.
No.
And my vote is no. The motion passes and the amendment is approved. So, let me check. All right, so at this point, the motion has been amended to postpone the decision on the start date until the next regular board meeting, which is April 27th. And I don't think there's any other discussion on this item. Director DeFoe?
That's correct.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. We'll move on to the next item. May I have a motion regarding a public hearing and approval? Oh, excuse me. Oh, yeah, that's what, yeah, I'm reading, thank you. But I need to have a motion first. May I have a motion regarding public hearing and approval of 1,080 hours of instruction?
Mr. President,
Director Crumwitty.
I move the administration's recommendation that the board approve a bell schedule which provides for 1,080 hours of instruction during the 2015-2016 school year rather than a 180-day calendar.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
We will now hold a public hearing on the 1,080 hours of instruction. Notice of the public hearing was published in the Quad City Times on April 3rd, 2015. Anyone wishing to speak, please come to the microphone and state your name and address.
Ty Cutcomp, Union Representative, 33 Oak Lane, Davenport. I just wanted to draw to the board's attention that in one of the collective bargaining agreements, the paraeducator contract, there is some reference to the number of work days that the paraeducators would have each year. And the contract references at Article 5, Section 3, 178 work days. And so not certain the impact about that would have, that the 1,080 hours of instruction matter would have upon the 178 work days or upon the item that will be the next item for the board conversation. But just wanted to draw that to the board's attention that there is that reference in the contract.
Do you mind staying up here in case there are any questions? Sure. Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this? Director DeFoe, did she leave? Okay, I knew she had to. I just missed her. All right, with that, seeing no others, I will call this public hearing closed. Is there any additional discussion on this subject? Director Dickman.
We did the 1,080 hours this year, and there didn't seem to be any problems, so I assume that it would be a similar situation going forward.
Yes, if we've had any problems this year, it'll be the same next year, and I don't know of any that we've had, so I think we're good.
Director Kluhl, did you have something?
I was just wondering if Ms. Miller had any response to Mr. Cutcomp's statements.
Next year, even with the 1,080 hours, as this year and previous years, we have 178 student days, 185 teacher days, 178 student days. And the reason that we had 178 days in the past is because we were allowed to file a calendar waiver for creative calendar, and we used 2 of the days for staff development days. We are still going to be able to get the 1,080 hours in with our daily schedule in 178 student days.
Okay.
Actually over 1,080.
Mr. Cutcomp, don't leave yet, please. I'm sure I'm going to ask a question here in just a second. Is there any additional discussion? Mr. Cutcomp, well, I appreciate the information, and with the presentation of your information, was there anything that we should read between the lines with respect to whether this poses a problem?
No, there really isn't anything to read between the lines. I just happened to be here and see this item on the agenda, and in good faith, I just wanted to mention that to look at this for potential implications. Apparently, Ms. Miller has analyzed this in advance and has determined that in the current school year that's ongoing, that the contractual specified number of work days had been offered to the paras. And so this wasn't a pre-planned appearance before the board tonight to attend this public hearing. It was just me having been in the audience and saying, wait a second, we shouldn't let this situation go unremarked to without having the ability to raise it, and then having the district have the ability to then speak to it. So that was the purpose for the words, Mr. Johansson.
I appreciate that. It makes me think about all of the contracts. And I remember some of the strong discussion last year on the 1080. And if this 1080, the way the law is written, the way I understand it, is we have to prove that each year. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's why we're doing that tonight. Yeah.
And that could complicate the contract or contract negotiations.
Yeah, our interest is just, pure upfront communications with the board, and just happened to be in the audience, just wanted to mention that. Sounds like Ms. Miller, on behalf of the district, has already analyzed the situation. We'll certainly look at that analysis to make sure that what Ms. Miller said is accurate. But again, this wasn't pre-planned. It was just happening to be in the audience and say, wait a second, in the interest and spirit of communication, we should probably at least say something to the issue.
Great. Well, I'm always happy when you're in our audience, Mr. Cutcomp. Thank you. Any other discussion? Director Snyder.
From our previous motion in the proposed calendar, it had mentioned canceling the June 1 school day because of our bank of hours. Would then that put us at 177 class days?
You talking about the next action item, or?
No, in the school calendar that we just postponed, it had said that we would cancel class day on June 1 and make our last day May 29th. But if we do that on that calendar, would that then drop us below the 178 to 177?
It would drop us below the 178 to 177. Having said that, if we do that, we had planned to have the paras be in attendance, as will the teachers be, because they are contracted for 185 days. The paras are contracted, so to speak, for 178, so they would be in the buildings working those days. They just wouldn't have students there.
Director Kluhl.
Just like to thank Governor Branstad for this extended opportunity for conversation.
Thank you for that. Any additional discussion? All right, we'll call for the, well, I think that I declared the hearing closed.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right. Okay, we'll call for the vote. Director Crumwitty?
Yes.
Director Dickman?
Yes.
Director DeFau is not here. Director Kluhl?
Yes.
Director Hayes?
Yes.
Director Snyder?
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. May I have a motion to approve to eliminate June 1, 2015 school day?
Mr. President?
Director DeFau. I'm sorry, Director Dickman. I apologize. I was reading here.
We haven't taken our 2-hour break yet. You're losing it.
I know.
I move the administration's recommendation that the board approve to eliminate the June 1st, 2015 school day, in that the 1,080 hours of instruction for all schools will have been met for the year.
Thank you. Is there a second? Is there any discussion? Director Snyder.
I guess this just makes me question the other contract obligations from our previous discussion. I know they said paras are going to be covered because they're going to be in the building. Is there anybody else that would be affected by dropping that one date?
We won't be running the buses, but again, they will do training, and food service will have training most likely. I mean, we don't know any effect. We asked that when we started talking about eliminating this. So the only thing that will happen is the kiddies will stay home.
Thank you.
Do you know of any other impact? Okay.
Any additional discussion? Director Dickman.
When I was down at the rally earlier, a teacher mentioned to me that by their calculations, there were multiple days that ran over the 1,080 hours. She wasn't sure if you guys had a different calculation, but is that how far over the 1,080 hours are we?
Well, as I've indicated here, the elementaries is 6.75 over, intermediate 6.75 over, and high schools are 3/4 of an hour over.
Okay.
Yep. So we very precise in our calculations to make sure we make the minimums.
Sorry, I missed that. Okay, that's it.
Any additional discussion? I have a question then. Since we postponed the decision on the start date, if the board has a start date that's later than the 24th, will any of those other days just be figured out somewhere else if we eliminate June 1st? Or would it make sense to postpone this decision as well until we approve the start date?
Well, two different calendars. This is this year's calendar, and we're running it to the end, and it's next year, so
I apologize.
we'll have no effect.
That was my mistake. Okay. My question is, again, what's the primary purpose for this?
It's, if we have school on that day, it's going to be a waste. It's a 2-hour early out. They will come, they'll watch videos or something, and then they will leave. And if they are not there, we can have some really good professional development. And that's what we're trying to do, is capture a good professional development day. So.
All right. Any additional discussion? Okay, we'll call for the vote. Director Dickman.
Yes.
Director Snyder.
Yes.
Director Kluhl.
Yes.
Director Hayes.
Yes.
Director Crumwitty.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. May I have a motion regarding approval of resolution directing the sale of bonds?
Mr. President,
Director
I'm going to pass
Snyder.
these out.
before we make another motion, I would like to make a motion that we take a 5-minute restroom break.
No motion required here because it's not on the agenda. We'll go ahead and just have a recess for 6 minutes, actually.
Director Johansson?
Yeah.
I have someone that's been sitting here wait patiently and has to return to Des Moines tonight.
Oh, okay.
If it would be possible, if we could wait and get through this motion?
We can get through it.
Thank you very much.
We'll postpone that recess and we'll
Thank you, Marcia.
we'll take one more item before we take a recess. May I have a motion regarding approval of resolution directing the sale of bonds?
Mr. President,
Director Hayes.
administration recommends that the board approve the following resolution directing the sale of 10 million school infrastructure sales service and use tax revenues bonds, Series 2015.
She has to read the resolution.
Yeah, you did say 10 million, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, you have to read the rest of it.
Whereas bids have been received for the bonds and evaluated, and the best bid was determined. Now therefore it is resolved by the Board of Directors of the Davenport Community School District, Section 1, that the bid for the bonds was determined by the Superintendent of Schools, Secretary of the Board, and the financial advisor to the best and most favorable bid received. Bonds are awarded based on the following bid. Bidder Robert W. Baird and Company, Incorporated of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Purchase price $9,942,693.69. Net interest cost $869,045.48. True interest cost 1.6920%. Section 2, that the form of contract for the sale of bonds is approved by the President and Secretary are authorized and direct to execute the contract of sales of bonds on behalf of the school district. Section 3, that all acts of the Superintendent of Schools, Secretary of the Board, and Financial Advisor done in furtherance of the sale of the bonds are ratified and approved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Excuse me a minute. Is there any discussion?
If I may, could I add something?
Sure.
Jenny Blankenship, Public Financial Management, Des Moines, Iowa. I would just like to say in front of all of you, we put a tabulation of bid sheet. At 11 o'clock today, we took these bids, and as you recall, this is part of the Local Option Sales Tax Projects, or SAVE. One thing that I would like to know is you guys received a very, very favorable rate today at the 1.6946%. That is a 10-year bond, and it goes out from 2016 to 2024. So I think last year when you guys made the decision to issue bonds for some of these projects to try to offset the cost of inflation on construction projects, I believe that you guys made a very, very good decision there. And so I wanted to note that. I also want to thank Marcia and her group for putting together the official statement and all of that hard work with the credit presentation. There's a lot of information in that official statement that you guys approved a couple weeks ago. So I just want to say thank you to Marcia, and I'd like to ask or answer any questions that you may have, and if not, I will wrap this up since I know you guys you want your break.
Thank you for that. Director Dickman.
I just wanted to express our appreciation for you being here late on a Monday night when you need to get home to Des Moines.
Thank you.
Director Kluhl.
Yeah, I was just curious. The not to exceed $10 million, and I'm looking at the price. We're $149,000 over $10 million. Can you explain that? Then I looked at the footnote, and I didn't really quite understand it.
Absolutely, I would love to explain that. Essentially, what's going on here is when we went out, we issued $10 million of bonds to the market. And we did so because when you issue bonds at $10 million or less, they're considered bank qualified bonds. However, the definition of bank qualified, once the bids come in, you guys actually received a premium bid, which essentially means there was an underwriter out there, in this case R.W. Baird along with their syndicate, wanted to pay you more for the bonds than the par amount. So they wanted to give you more money up front than the bonds were actually worth, if you will. But in doing so, then they also want to have higher interest rates on those, or higher coupons. So essentially, when you look at the two of what the purchase price is, as well as what the coupons are, that's how we calculate all of that, and it averages down into the true interest cost. However, normally we would have gone ahead and approved that, but essentially that would have legally made us issuing bonds something over that $10 million, which would not qualify these for bank qualification anymore. Which is why down at the statement down below, we actually resized the par amount of these down to the $9,795,000, which made the production, which is not on here, but is what constitutes how you calculate that $10 million, to be under the $10 million and not over. So that's why you'll see that the resulting purchase price actually had to be $9,942,693 in order to make sure that we were having the legal calculation done correctly for the bank qualification levels.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Any additional discussion? All right. Superintendent Tate.
Not sure if you have this answer, but inflation for construction now, do you have any idea what it is?
You know, I thought that you might ask that, and I honestly, I don't know. What I will tell you is what I found with several of the school districts that I've been working with, and cities, because we work with a lot of cities throughout Iowa. Construction bids continually are coming in over estimate, so I don't know if that's resulting in additional inflation, but that is something that I can say. I'm not sure exactly what the inflation is, but I can't imagine that it's under 1.69% a year.
Anything else? All right, we'll call for the vote. Director Hayes.
Yes.
Director Kluhl.
Yes.
Director Dickman.
Yes.
Director Crumwitty.
Yes.
Director Snyder.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much, you guys.
Yep,
Have a great
thank
night.
you.
Thanks, Marcia.
Marcia, do you have any other reasons to delay a recess? Okay. That's all right. Okay, we'll have a 6-minute recess now. Yep. May I have a motion regarding approval of bid for the Wilson Elementary partial roof replacement project?
Mr. President,
Director Dickman.
I move the administration's recommendation that the board approve the lowest responsive bid of $287,500 from Economy Roofing of Bettendorf, Iowa for the Wilson partial roofing replacement project.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Director Snyder, did you have something?
Nope.
Oh, okay. Anybody else? Director Dickman.
Does this increase the R value so that we're insulating better?
Yes.
That was it?
Any additional discussion? Okay, we'll call for the vote. Director Dickman.
Yes.
Director Crumwitty.
Yes.
Director Kluhl.
Yes.
Director Hayes.
Yes.
Director Snyder.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. May I have a motion regarding approval of bid for the West and North Track resurfacing project?
Mr. President,
Director Crumwitty.
I move the administration's recommendation that the board approve the lowest responsive bid of $196,537 from Fisher Tracks for the West High and North High Schools track resurfacing project.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? All right. Oh, Director Dickman?
How long is this track expected to last?
These track surfaces generally go 10 or 12 years before they need to be resurfaced.
Thank you.
Any additional discussion? Okay, we'll call for the vote. Director Crumwitty?
Yes.
Director Kluhl?
Yes.
Director Dickman?
Yes.
Director Hayes?
Yes.
Director Snyder?
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. May I have a motion regarding approval of bid for the district security camera cabling project?
Mr. President,
Director Dickman.
I move the administration's recommendation that the board approve the lowest responsive bid of $624,385 from Tri-City Electric for the district-wide security camera cabling project.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion?
What do you think about that? Is that okay?
I'm thinking about it.
Well,
Director Kluhl.
While the president is thinking, I think, Director, everybody here on the board knows my position on this will be no, and I think you probably attended all of last year. You've heard my entire rationale for my concern about overreach in terms of television cameras, so I won't repeat that at this time, but my vote will continue to be no on this issue.
Any additional discussion? I've got a couple questions then. The this cabling, we've already done all the cameras, right?
We've done intermediate and high schools. The security cameras in this project are the elementary schools. And there's some additional cabling and wireless access points that, in addition to the cameras, included in this project.
I think this cabling always comes to me as somewhat of a surprise. If you were to say, percentage-wise, what percent is the cabling versus the cameras themselves in a school?
I'm going to say about 60, 65.
Is the percent of the cabling?
Yes, and there
Or percent
are
of the project for
racks and
cabling?
switches and things like that that are included with the cabling. The data closets that you see with all the racks in them, those are part of the cabling. And in this particular project, there are also some walls and things like that to create data closets where there currently are none.
You know, I've always been supportive of these cameras. And for a number of reasons, and Director Kluhl and I just plain disagree philosophically with these cameras. But the cost of these cameras is starting to bother me. And then I start thinking technology. Is this camera technology and this cabling technology, is it viable for the long term as far as you know?
The cabling is the very best standard currently. The Learning Information Services Department has written the specification for this. This is called Category 6E. This is the very best currently available internet computer cabling. And increasingly the devices that are coming out are actually get their power through the internet cable, power over Ethernet it's called. And this cable is capable of delivering the electrical power in addition to the data signal to these new PoE devices. So it's the very best cable currently available.
Do they have wireless cameras right now?
I'm sure there are.
Yeah. All right. Any additional discussion? Okay. Oh, Director Kluhl. Oh,
Just curious, will this be compatible with the city's fiber optic network?
Yes.
anything else,
No.
Director Kluhl? Director Snyder?
We have already approved the cameras at the elementary level, correct?
Yes, you have.
Thank you.
Any additional discussion? All right. Now we'll call for the vote. Director Dickman?
Yes.
Director Hayes?
Yes.
Director Snyder?
Yes.
Director Kluhl?
No.
Director Crumwoody?
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. May I have a motion for approval of change order for injection well at Wood Intermediate?
Mr. President.
Director Snyder.
I move that the board accept the administration's recommendation to approve the change order in the amount of $150,894 for the injection well at Wood Intermediate.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Director Dickman.
What is an injection well?
This is for the geothermal heating and cooling system. There are 2 wells involved. One is a supply well that brings the water out of the ground, and the other is the reinjection well that pushes the water back into the ground.
That was more of my curiosity. Thank you.
Director Cluel.
I'm curious about the need for the change order.
We took bids for the reinjection well as a separate bid package or bid item in the sequence of the work. And there are 2 companies regionally that provide this service. Gingrich did not have time in their schedule and did not submit a bid. Shawver drilled the supply well, so they were already under contract. So issuing them a change order saves some administrative cost rather than setting up a new contract.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional discussion? Okay, we'll call for the vote. Director Snyder?
Yes.
Director Cluel?
Yes.
Director Crumwoody?
Yes.
Director Dickman?
Yes.
Director Hayes?
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. We've got 2 discussion items. I'd like to move to 11.02 first, and then we'll address 11.01. 11.02 is moving board reports as an agenda item. This was requested by Director Snyder. Director Snyder, why don't you lead that report, or that discussion?
I just made that recommendation because, one, our board reports don't take that long. But as an example, tonight, by the time we get to give our board reports to, the only people that are left are our 3 remaining student members. You know, as there's been a lot of times where I have just not forgotten, but just left my board report off because there was nobody left to report to. As a board member, it's kind of fun to talk about the things we've done, the things we've seen, the things that we're excited about. But if there's nobody left to talk to them about, what's the point?
Thank you. Any additional discussion? Director Crumwoody.
I'm curious, Director Snyder, where on the agenda would you suggest we might move that item? I think you have a legitimate point. Sometimes, and I just was talking to some of our student board members because sometimes the hour gets late. They need to get home and work on homework and so forth. So I certainly support your idea. I just am curious as to where you might
Right after student board reports is where I would put it.
Okay. Thank you.
Any additional discussion? If there's, Director Dickman?
I like the idea of being almost as cool as our students so we can follow them.
What I'm inclined to do is to ask the agenda committee to consider that at their next meeting, and go ahead and either make the decision on what the board has said tonight. Director Snyder?
I guess also with that, out of respect of their time, our audience's time, and our time too, that we not, because we are moving them up, get too carried away with them and prolong it. But I do think it's important that we talk about the things that we've done and the things that we're excited about, and that's where I'm at.
I appreciate you bringing it up. Thank you very much. Director Crumwoody.
So if we do this right after student reports, during the board report time, we also make board requests. And it seems to me, and I think this has happened several times, board requests sometimes come about because of open forum issues. And so if we do this, and I like the idea of having the reports early, but I would also suggest we have perhaps an item on the agenda for board requests at the end, because sometimes people come forward and then we do fill out requests.
Absolutely. I would completely agree, because there's times where 5 minutes before the requests, something comes to mind. So I do think it's important to leave those at the end. But the reports, are individual board reports, I think would be important to move up.
Thank you. Any additional discussion? Director Cluel.
In regards to being cool, following the students, I think you can give that up. There's an old vaudeville adage that you never want to follow a kid or a dog act, because you're not going to be cool. A little bit of adage from the seniors on the group. Officially, seniors.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Student board members, you haven't spoken too much tonight. Do you have anything to weigh in here? Go ahead, Mitchell.
I think we really all like the idea of moving them up.
Great, thank you. All right.
I'll pay you later.
All right. Thank you very much for that. The last item of discussion is one that we postponed at the last meeting, which is report on board self-evaluation. Let me pull that up here. There are 3 documents attached to your agenda there. The one that I think is the most significant for the purpose of this discussion is the first one, which is Davenport Board Work Session List of 9 possible next steps. Now, we've estimated that to go through all of this is going to take some time. Excuse me. And we've also determined that this is important and to some extent urgent. Last time we asked the board where they were. It's kind of a mixed bag of sense of timing on it. I would like to at least get started on these unless the board has an interest in postponing again. Director Crumwoody.
I'm only concerned because Nikki's not here, and I think it's important that all board members are together to have this conversation. So that's my only concern of doing it.
I always appreciate your thoughtfulness.
And I know we've delayed this already.
We've delayed it, and all right, is there any other discussion on, should we keep going with this? Director Cluel.
Well, I'd like to take like to be considered as thoughtful as my partner here. But I would like to have Director DeFau here when we discuss this. Certainly be beneficial. But I would like us to. We've got 9 possible next steps here. I think if we could put these on, the agenda committee can talk about how to do this, but perhaps consider working through these as we can till we get all 9. And I think that's probably what you had in mind. But perhaps waiting until we're all together would be the best thing to do.
Director Snyder.
I think there's one of these that we could address, and that is number 2. That's to identify a person on the board to be the professional development board learning advocate, to keep board learning at the forefront of the conversation, constantly asking what do we need to learn together about this. Nikki's only going to be with us a few more months, and I really don't think she would have an objection if we were to decide that or to at least discuss that part of it. I can think of one person right off the top of my head that I think would be perfect for this role, but I don't know if they would be interested, and that would be Director Dickman, because she's already proven that she does very well with her advocacy out in the community. She's good at organization. She's going to be here for a while. She's not up for re-election in this fall. And I think she'd be great for this role.
Thank you for your observations about item 2. It is true that we could at least talk about it a little bit. We could accept indications of interest. It's a little bit before 9. I'll go ahead and accept any other discussion on item 2. Anybody? Director Kluhl.
Well, since Director Snyder has started the discussion already, I think Director Dickman would do well if she's willing to take it on.
Any additional discussion? Director Hayes.
I would tend to agree.
Director Crumity.
Well, I'm not going to be around after 4 months, so I think Director Dickman too would do a good job. I think I like the idea of having a professional development advocate or person. I just think it's pretty exciting. This is the first time we've ever done a book study, and we've talked about, ever since I've been on the board for 9 years of being a learning board, and we've not really had much conversation about that. So I think it's a great idea. I hope this board continues that sort of thing. And right now we're dealing with poverty. That's not going to go away. Hopefully, between Maria and Linda, Linda has jumped right on board with that, and I don't think it also always has to fall on Maria's shoulders, but to kind of get it organized and have other people on this board to assist. So I think it's a great idea to have one person, though, in charge of the professional development.
Well, Director Dickman.
I'm very flattered, and I would be honored and excited to take on that role. And I think that having one person be the coordinator, but then other board members, of course, if they stumbled upon something, I would hope that they would bring it forward to me. And I think that the idea of us being a learning board and discovering new things at all times would be fantastic, not only for ourselves, but obviously for our students.
Put Alfie Cohen on the top of the list.
No, do not.
I might stay on the board.
You will. You will.
Okay, thank you all very much for that discussion. That is one item that at the next regular board meeting, I'll go ahead and identify, most likely, Director Dickman, since you have accepted the idea and everybody has supported that. I think that's great to at least address one of these. And thank you, Director Snyder, for bringing that to our attention. It's one of the things that we can get off of our list, and we'll continue to modify that. Superintendent Tate.
And we're working on number 7, so you can take that off your list. We'll have that done in about a month.
Good.
Great. Thank you. Okay, so that's 2 out of 9. What's that fraction?
2 nines. 2 nines.
All right, what's that percentage? Okay, great. Thank you for that. All right. Are there any administrative reports?
None.
Are there any board reports or requests? Director Dickman.
I, of course, have forgotten when it was, but between this meeting and the last one, I got to attend a program at Ambrose University called V-Day, celebrating gender equality and also raising awareness about sexual assault, domestic violence, all sorts of things like that. And I'm really proud that the university here in Davenport is taking such proactive steps to address these societal-wide challenges. And I'm hopeful that that we can get involved with their efforts as well, and really bring that message home to the rest of the community that that these are problems that we can address.
Thank you. Any additional? Director Snyder.
Last Tuesday night at First Baptist? Third
Mission.
What is it?
Third Missionary Baptist.
Third Missionary Baptist on 14th Street. I do know that. Ms. Vera Kelly put together a public kind of information session on what we're striving to do with funding inequity, and there was a really good turnout. It was well put together, and I wanted to thank Vera for doing that, as well as Director Hayes for her role. And I thought it was a great information session, and it was exciting to see that people do have an interest in what we're doing and their support as well.
Thank you. Any additional reports or requests? Director Cromedy.
Yes, a couple things. First of all, in our last book discussion session on poverty, I was just really elated when I picked up the newspaper the next morning and read about our mayor and how he has stressed that poverty is a real issue in this city, and that we all need to work together on this issue. And here, both of our organizations were having discussions at the same time about the poverty issue, and I think that's pretty exciting that we are united in our effort here with the school board and the city. And of course, I can't say enough about the Poverty Committee and all the people across this community that we have involved. So thank you, Mayor Gluba, and again to the Poverty Committee. Now, I want to talk about one of my exciting things I did. My wife and I attended the Drowsy Chaperone this weekend at North High School. And I was just blown away. It was a phenomenal musical. And one of the leading characters is right here at the board table, Rachel. And I was so excited about, oh, I know her. I said to my wife, she's on our board. And then sitting next to her is Bennett. And I was out in the lobby speaking to one of my former students from Truman, who I think he's probably is he the head of the tech group? Stage manager. And here's Bennett. I found out was on the tech group too. So it was a great play and a great musical. And thanks to you and to the North High group, because you guys just did a phenomenal job. And I'm sorry I missed the one at West and Central, but this year I went to North.
Thank you so much. It means a lot.
Any additional board reports or requests? Director Kluhl.
Well, we did go to Des Moines last Wednesday, and we were glad to have God on our side as we left that rally on Tuesday evening at Third Missionary. It was wonderful, and we talked about it, and I believe some of us felt it too. But we did have a good meeting with our state legislature and our governor. One of the most affirmative responses that we had during the entire day was with Speaker Paulson, who said that he, as long as our bill, Senate Study Bill 1254, did not include raising property taxes, he supported it. And have somebody of his stature make a statement like that it made our day, actually. So we are still moving forward with that action to try to make sure that all students are treated with equality across the state through the student funding formula. Our next stop is to work with Representative Sands, who is the chair of the Ways and Means Committee in the House, because we have hopes that the House Ways and Means Committee is the next stop on our travels to that mountaintop of achieving equality for all students across the state. So we're continuing to work towards that, and again, you know, Third Missionary was a real support. Our students have been a support. The folks that were out front, Jennifer and company, without their energy, I don't think we would be doing what we're doing. And the superintendent wouldn't be making, like you said, that Worth Less shirt was very impactful for him. So altogether, we're making things happen here in Davenport, and hopefully for kids across the state.
Thank you. Any additional reports or requests? All right. Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. All those, oh, excuse me, Rachel.
Oh.
Sorry.
That's all right.
I just thought of something that slipped my mind earlier during the student school board reports. Something that was really cool that happened last week while the rest of North High was taking ITEDs. Seniors don't have to take them every year because they no longer really need to. But so for those 2 days that the freshmen through juniors were taking them, we actually did some pretty cool things. The first day we ended up having a lecture on financial literacy and also on ethics, which I thought a lot of good information was in that, and I was happy we had that opportunity. And the next day we ended up doing some leadership and teamwork games together, and that was really fun. The students, of course, the seniors, they were a little bit like, I don't want to be here right now, we should just go home. But eventually through the games, they started working together more and thinking and working through the mind games, and it was really cool to see them participate. So I just want to mention that. I forgot about it.
Who coordinated those, Rachel? Do you know?
A big part of it was Steve Verdon.
Okay.
He was from West, but now he's at North. So it's cool.
It's a cultural shift. That's great.
Yeah. Bennett?
And then another interesting thing that happened, I think it was 2 weeks ago, was Dave Schaefer put together a whole leaving high school with a portfolio resume type thing. And that was really helpful for a lot of the students, I think.
Mitchell?
I don't have anything to add.
Okay, thank you. You know, and thank you for interrupting me, Rachel, because this is really important, what you're telling us. And I wish you had been able to remember that and bring it up so everybody else could hear it. That's really, really neat stuff.
You should hear Rachel sing.
Well, maybe.
Are you prepared?
Hey, we have time, and there's a mic.
A cappella or not?
I don't know. What do you want to hear?
Huh?
What do you want to hear?
I don't know. Why don't you, can you sing just a couple of, yeah, just real quick. What the heck?
Love makes lovers worry, love makes lovers fret, but here's a fact on which we can depend. Just like long ago when Romeo loved Juliet, love is always lovely in the end. Ooh, that was a little out of tune, but thank you.
Wow, that is amazing.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Well, we might have to schedule a special meeting before the end of the year, and maybe you can do a little bit more.
Try
All
to
right.
get.
Well, now,
Sorry.
Director Snyder.
How much fun would that have been in the middle of the meeting?
That could be the new break time. We could just have karaoke.
Hey, great idea.
Dr. Tate can do this.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm glad to have had such a nice, fun meeting with everybody. I appreciate it. It's been moved and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor say aye. This meeting is adjourned.